Welcome to this episode of Blended, Blessed, and Always a Mess. I'm Aric.
And I'm Angie.
We are married with a ton of kids.
We have 6 kids total. He has 3 and I have 3.
My name's Hallie and I love riding horses.
My name's Lexi and I've always been the most responsible.
My name's Carter and I like picking on my siblings.
My name's Chase and I love a clean truck.
My name's Summer and I still like to spend my parents' money.
My name's Dane and I love baseball.
And around here, we talk about the real stuff. Parenting, marriage, faith.
Along with grief, growth, second chances, and blended family life.
And all the in-between moments that don't make it to Instagram.
Our podcast is for the couples figuring it out, the parents trying their best, and the ones holding faith and heartbreak in the same hand.
Look, we don't have it all together.
Not even close.
But we do have honesty.
And a whole lot of grace.
This is Blended, Blessed, and Always a Mess.
Let's get into it.
Welcome to this week's episode of Blended, Blessed, and Always a Mess, where it is a date day today.
Yes, Eric's getting a whole day of me, isn't he? So lucky. So blessed.
I always feel that way, actually. And so we're doing so. I don't think we've ever gone to the Missouri State Fair together.
God, no.
Well, when I grew up,
Sorry.
The State Fair is in Sedalia. That is where I grew up. We went every year as a kid because that was the only thing to do in Sedalia. So I really don't go as an adult. And then last minute.
Sorry to offend people, but it's not my thing.
Last minute, my best friend who moved to North Carolina a couple of years ago for a job texted he was going to be in tonight. And I hadn't seen him in almost 2 years. So Angie and I are going to go over there, visit with him and his wife. We're going to go to see Little Big Town tonight. Favorite Little Big Town song, go.
I don't.
You're going to know some Little Big Town songs.
Yeah, so we're way behind.
I love your wild rag, just as a side note, an ode to Hallie.
Hallie scarf, because I feel like So we're way behind. It's Saturday, and we release this episode tomorrow.
In like less than 12 hours.
We record on a Wednesday night, but I traveled Wednesday through Friday of this week. I went to Ocean City, Maryland. Have not been to Maryland before. I visited with a customer. It was great. Had a hell of a time coming back on Friday. I switched my flight 2 different times, but made it back home. Carter moved out this week on Friday. He moved into his college apartment with some buddies as he heads to Mizzou in his junior year. It was like yesterday was rough. Yesterday was a very rough day for me. I was super exhausted, but also Carter moving out. Love having Carter at home. He's moving into the den, which is where Hallie lived, and that was her last apartment with her roommate, Sydney. And there's a lot of great memories there. We drive by, I just still look at her window. And
I told Angie last night, it was hard for me yesterday moving him in. Like, you would think I would have been sad Carter was moving out. Angie's more sad about this than I am. I'm like, hey, buddy, it's time to launch. I'm always afraid he's going to be like that Matthew McConaughey movie, Failure to Launch, with Kate Hudson.
Fine.
And so I was fine. But I told her, I said it was odd because I could vividly remember the day we moved Hallie into that apartment. And that made me sad yesterday in that process.
Carter, because we gang up on you.
I know that's why you're going to miss, because he makes fun of me and he can get away with it. And then everybody thinks they can pile on.
So funny. Yeah. And then also, like, when you have extreme loss, especially with a child, like, I feel like when I worry about my other kids, and I've got one of them that I'm worried about, it just magnifies everything by 1,000. And it's like all that grief and heaviness and that worry that I had about Hallie for 3 years all just like knocks me down. So saying all that, and there was no way we were going to record a podcast last night.
That was our original plan, and it did not happen. She had a rough night.
Would not stop.
A tears trip to the bathroom, which when that happens, as we've addressed on here, I've learned over time just to let her go. Don't follow her there.
No.
So at least
Unless
that part we're getting.
Feel my wrath.
So that's hard as a husband, right? Like, I want to be able to provide comfort and relief. And I've just learned she got out of bed and she's crying in the other room. That's what she wants. Leave her there to do that.
That's why I got up.
Yes.
If I wanted to stay and have you listen to me not be able to catch my breath, then I would have stayed.
And for us, I think that's what you call growth in a marriage that's full of grief. So that's where we are. So today we're recording, trying to kind of pick ourselves up out of a sad spot, if you will, and go spend some time doing something we've not done together before. So you're going to love Little Big Town. You're going to know a bunch of their songs.
It'll be great.
Little White Church, Pontoon. We first started dating.
Cowboy boots on.
We first started dating. We'd drive around in the Jeep, listen to the wine, the beer, the whiskey.
Yeah, I know.
They got a pretty song called Bring It On Home. I know what you need, so bring it on home to me. That's a good one. I'll be looking
Good
forward to
job.
that
You
one
haven't
tonight.
done that in a minute.
But we do have a big event this Thursday. It'll be the first time that Angie and I give a speech together. And I'm excited about this.
We've had a couple people reach out recently on
Mhm.
top of already having this scheduled to give talks. So I feel like it's starting to pick up a little bit. So if you're listening, we're always game for that. It doesn't matter the topic or the audience, $0.
I
Like,
read a guy, an author that I really like, and he speaks in front of hundreds of thousands of people a year now. And one of his first events, he was so fired up and he was ready to go 2 people.
Yeah.
And so to get to a room and find out only 2 people showed up to your talk was demoralizing, but he actually really visited with one guy that really helped his perspective. And so, yeah, we will do it for different size rooms. I think we're going to have a couple hundred men maybe on
Yeah,
Thursday
so
morning. So
That's the thing. It's all men. It's men as allies. And I thought we would run through our talk track to practice for you guys because we have not ran through it together.
Yeah.
And it's Thursday. I sat down and wrote it a long time ago. Well, as soon as we were asked, I'm like, okay, what would be the topic? And instantly for me, it was like the power of being vulnerable as a man. And so we'll just dive in.
Yeah.
So we
this
have a
is-
speaker before us, and Aric and I met with her, and wow, her story is super sad, but also beautiful how she's transformed her story. She's actually Miss Missouri. And she will speak before us, and then I will start.
Yeah,
Kick us
the
off.
event is called True North, which is where Angie spoke back in May to the Little Black Dress, which was like 700-800 women. This is the True North Men of Allies breakfast, where it's all men. And we're trying to change the hearts of men so that we can show up better for the women in our lives. So
yeah, we'll dive in. Okay, so I already kind of kicked us off, but when I was asked to speak at Men as Allies, I immediately thought about the power of being vulnerable because it is one of the most powerful gifts a man can give someone that he loves, especially his daughter. And I will tell you why. So I grew up in a family with 7 kids, and my parents loved us deeply. Unconditional love. I never questioned that. But when it came to relationships, dating, what to look for in a partner, we had guidance, but there wasn't a ton of education around that. And not because my parents didn't care. They just simply didn't have the tools. There was no social media educating parents on red flags, green flags. There weren't podcasts like we listened to or books or conversations happening at scale like they are today. And so most people learn relationships by living them and often by surviving them. I certainly did. When I was young, I fell for a guy who looked great on paper. He's handsome, confident, athlete, kind of the guy that everybody gravitated towards. But behind the scenes, he did not treat me well at all. Drank too much. He was arrogant. He was totally disrespectful. He was embarrassed to be around me because there was an age gap. He was not faithful in our relationship. And after 2 years, I finally had the courage to end that relationship. And I remember telling my parents that we had broken up. And my dad, I will never forget his response. He said, well, who's going to help me cut wood? Now, my dad loves me. And I know he didn't mean to diminish what I was going through, but I'll never forget that moment because what I heard was not concern for me. What I heard was, yeah, you're on your own. Because let me back up here. I had 3 older brothers, very capable older brothers that could cut wood and did cut wood. But in that moment, I learned something that shaped me for years. Nobody was talking to me about what healthy looked like. Nobody was helping me understand what I deserved. So I just continued to figure it out the hard way. I moved on to other relationships and made a lot of mistakes, learning through the pain what I wish someone would have taught me through conversation. I got married really young. I married someone who was loyal, fun, good person, and for a while life was good. But over time, I realized something important. A healthy relationship isn't built only on loyalty. It's built on communication, vulnerability, having the hard conversations, being able to express your needs, being heard, adapting when life changes, rebuilding when things get difficult, staying connected when things get uncomfortable. Those were skills neither of us had been taught, and not because we didn't care, not because we didn't love each other, but because many of us come from generations where emotions weren't discussed and difficult conversations weren't modeled. Together, we had 3 incredible children, Hallie, and then 7 years later, twins, Chase and Summer. When Hallie was 12, we divorced. As I look back now, I just can reflect and just see how much communication really matters. And not just in a marriage, but in parenting, especially between fathers and daughters. Daughters need to know they matter and not from their mom. It needs to be said from their dad. They need to know that they're seen. They need to know that their voice matters. They need to know what healthy love looks like before the world starts teaching them something different. Because when that doesn't happen, they often go searching for validation, belonging, worth in places that can't provide it or from people who can't provide it. And sometimes they eventually find their way, and sometimes the consequences are much greater. When Hallie was in high school, she started dating a boy. And as a mom, you just know sometimes there's something in my gut, something I couldn't explain, something that never sat right. And the rest of our family felt it too. We all had concerns. Her dad had concerns. Her family had concerns. Her friends had concerns. The people who loved her had concerns. And we talked often about the difficult conversations that needed to be had with Hallie. The challenge wasn't a lack of love. The challenges were really around not knowing how, because conversations about relationships require us all to be vulnerable. They're uncomfortable. Sometimes your kids don't like it and they push back, they get mad. And in divorce families, it's even more complicated because you don't always have the time. And when they are at your house, you don't want to spend it making them mad. You don't always know how your words will be received. And Hallie was strong-willed, independent, passionate, a deep feeler. And the more pressure she felt, the more she pulled away. And I shared my concerns often, but I also knew something from my own experience that girls want to hear it from their dads. Moms nurture, moms worry, moms repeat themselves. But there is something uniquely powerful about a father's voice. And I remember Hallie calling me one day after hearing that her dad had hoped she'd meet someone new at Mizzou when she went to college. And listen, we all said it. We all thought it. We all were praying for that. But she was upset, and she said something I've never forgotten. She said, "Mom, how am I supposed to know what good looks like if my dad doesn't talk to me about it?" So she wasn't upset at what he said. She was upset because she wanted that hard conversation. That wasn't an accusation. It was kind of a plea. A daughter asking for guidance, a daughter wanting connection, daughter wanting someone she trusted to help her understand what she deserved. Again, this isn't a lack of love. Her dad loved her deeply. It's just about something bigger, that many men have never been taught how to navigate these conversations. Many were never shown how. Many were never given permission to be vulnerable themselves. Then Aric entered our lives during Hallie's senior year. Now, this man was the complete opposite. He wanted to have every conversation imaginable. sometimes too many conversations about relationships, boundaries, respect, life, future goal, all of it. Which when you're talking to a strong-willed 17-year-old girl, sometimes that doesn't go over very well. Her response was often, "Hey, I already have a dad." And honestly, she did. What she needed wasn't another father. What she needed was more people willing to step in to have those hard conversations because they were okay being uncomfortable. And then she went to Mizzou. And we all thought, this is it. She's going to meet someone new, fresh start, new people, new opportunities, a chance for her world to expand. But then COVID hit. And instead of expanding her world, it isolated her in it. And the red flags continued in the relationship she was in. I voiced concern. Her friends voiced concern. But strong, independent girls don't back down easily. And when they love, they lean in. When they believe in someone, they fight for them. When I raised concern, she pulled away. And eventually, I had to make a decision. I didn't want to lose my relationship with my daughter over the relationship that she was in. So I stayed connected. I stayed present. I kept loving her. Her junior year, she moved in with him. 45 minutes away from her school, her job, her horse, her friends, her life. And I remember asking her, why are you making your life harder? The answers were never logical. And looking back, they weren't about convenience. It was about control, separating her from people that she loved. And 3 months later, our lives changed forever. We received a call that no parent should ever receive. Hallie was being life-flighted to the University of Missouri. And that day, everything inside of me shattered. We stood there watching the helicopter land, praying, begging, believing somehow there would be a different ending. And the doctors walked in and they told us that a bullet had struck her C1 vertebrae and her brainstem, that her brain and her body were no longer communicating, that machines were keeping her alive. And there's nothing that they can do. Later that day, we learned what happened, that he had shot her from 5 feet away. And this was the explanation. I didn't know it was loaded. Over the years, I've learned something. Control doesn't begin with the trigger. Possession doesn't begin with the trigger. Those things start long before the final act. They start in isolation. They start in manipulation. They start in emotional control. And they start when someone slowly convinces another person that their worth, their identity, and world should revolve around them. For 2 days, I physically laid beside my lifeless daughter, the same daughter whose first breath I witnessed, the same daughter that I rocked to sleep, the same daughter I loved with every part of my being. And I held her as she took her last breath. There are no words for that kind of pain, that kind of loss. But there is a lesson I wish every parent, every mentor, every man in this room could hear. We do not talk enough about unhealthy relationships. Not just like abusive ones, controlling ones, manipulative, emotionally unhealthy relationships, because those are often the relationships that don't leave bruises. They leave confusion and isolation, self-doubt, and a slow erosion of self-worth. And that's why these conversations matter. So to aid in the conversation, I'm going to share some relationship red flags that we witness that you can then pull into the conversation. Because Dad, sometimes your daughters won't tell you something is wrong. Sometimes you'll notice the changes before she has words for them. And when you see them, your first instinct may be to protect her, confront her, or tell her what she needs to do. But I would just start with a conversation, ask questions, listen more than you talk, and just keep that door open. But here are some things to pay attention to. Silence where there used to be openness. Maybe your daughter used to tell you everything. Now she doesn't talk about her relationship. She changes the subject or says everything's fine, but something feels different. You could start the conversation by saying, I've noticed you don't seem like yourself lately. I don't want to get in your business, but I just want you to know you can tell me anything. And then listen. Or maybe she's slowly becoming distant from her family and friends. She stops seeing the people that she loves, missing family events, stops talking to her friends, or seems to need to have permission to go do things freely. Pay attention. Don't say he's isolating you. Instead, maybe ask, do you feel like you can still be yourself around the people that you love? Here's another one. She's changing herself to keep someone else happy. Maybe she dresses different, talks different. She stops doing the things that she loves or changes her opinions. I would ask her, do you feel like you can completely be yourself in this relationship? Healthy love should leave room for individuality. Maybe she stopped doing the things that make her who she is. Maybe your daughter used to play sports, spend time with friends, go to church, travel, laugh, chase her dreams. Now those things have disappeared. Don't immediately blame the boyfriend. Just ask, hey, I miss seeing you do the things that make you happy. Do you miss them too? That way you're not telling her what you think, but you're helping her notice what she's experiencing. Maybe it feels like she's walking on eggshells. Watch for the little things. She checks her phone constantly. She's worried about how he'll react. She's afraid of making him mad. She changes plans easily. Maybe she seems relieved when he's happy, and maybe she's anxious when he's not. You could ask, do you ever feel like you're responsible for keeping him happy or keeping him from getting angry? That answer matters. Maybe she's constantly making excuses for his behavior. He didn't mean it. He's really stressed. It was my fault. When you hear this repeatedly, resist the urge to say, I told you so. Instead, hey, if your best friend told you that same story, what would you tell her? Sometimes it's easier to recognize unhealthy behavior when it's happening to someone else. Her confidence is disappearing. This one can be an easy one to miss. Listen to how she talks about herself. I can't do anything right. I'm probably just being dramatic. No one else would put up with me. I'm probably too sensitive. When your daughter's confidence starts disappearing, don't just tell her you're better than that. Remind her who she is. Hey, I've watched you grow up, and you're growing into an incredible woman. I hope you're with someone who sees what I've always seen in you. If the people around her are all concerned, if her mom's concerned, her siblings, her friends, you're concerned, don't gang up on her. Become the safest person in the room. Don't make her choose between you and the person she's with. Don't threaten. Don't say you're never going to see him again. Just say, hey, you don't have to protect me from the truth, or you don't have to make this relationship look good for us. If something's wrong, you can tell me. No matter what you decide, you can always come home. Because your job isn't always to make your daughter make the decision that you would make. Sometimes your job is to make sure she knows when she's ready to make a decision. She won't have to make it alone. So while I've shared this story through the eyes of a mother, I want you to hear from a man who chose to step into those uncomfortable conversations, a man who learned that vulnerability isn't weakness, that it's leadership, it's love, and sometimes it is the greatest form of protection that we can offer.
Well, first and foremost, I know many of you in this room. And so for me to talk about vulnerability, it would not be genuine if I didn't first acknowledge that I have blown it more than I care to admit. And I've blown it in relationships. I have blown it at times by not showing up for my kids. I've blown it by drinking too much. I made numerous mistakes. And in order to be vulnerable, what I found is that the first step is admitting I failed. Times I failed God, people that I love, and some of you in this very room. And you know what I did after admitting my failures? I surrounded myself with people who would lift me back up. Some men in this room, you know who you are. And through those times, I've worked to build a relationship with God that gives me strength to show up for my wife and my kids. And some men like yourselves who need to hear that you're not alone and we can walk these paths together. Because life is hard. And with all of that being said, turning the attention to what happened to Hallie, I'm sure each and every one of you in this room is probably thinking the same thing. What would I have done differently? How could I have protected my daughter? I have asked myself that question so many times. I've wished that I had had more time with Hallie. I felt like the last year of her life, I was really starting to maybe make some headway in our relationship and build the kind of trust that we needed. But the real question is then, how can I start showing up better today? Because it's not just about daughters. It's about our nieces, granddaughters, sisters, friends, and coworkers. Talking about the girl who's watching every interaction and learning what she should be expecting from men in her lives. And that starts with something most men were never taught. That's how to be vulnerable. I would say it's not something that I learned at a young age. For generations, we were taught to provide and protect and to work hard, suck it up, rub some dirt on it, be strong. And somewhere along the way, many of us were taught that strength meant silence. And if we showed our emotions, then we were weak. Having a hard conversation had to be uncomfortable. Just a spoiler, a lot of them are, but they still have to be had. We have to keep our feelings buried. Here's the problem with all of that. The people that we love in our lives, our wives, our kids, family members, they don't need our silence. They need us to be present. They need us to keep showing up. They need our words, our guidance, and to know what healthy love looks like before someone unhealthy convinces them otherwise, that it's something else. Because you see, vulnerability isn't sitting your daughter down for one awkward conversation when she turns 16. Because let's be honest, we would have our daughters' mothers do that. We would have the awkward conversation with our sons instead. It's actually hundreds of conversations long before that one. It's asking questions. It's listening to them more than we're talking. It's creating a relationship where she knows she can bring you the hard stuff that's embarrassing, scary, mistakes they're making, any relationship concerns. You might think, well, they're going to take those to their mom. Maybe. But depending on the relationship you built with your daughter, it could be you. There's going to be times when she's confused and ashamed, even afraid. And if she can't talk to you about small things that are going on in her life on a day-to-day basis, she's not going to talk to you about the big things that are happening. So here's what I wish all of us understood this morning. For me, I really wish I had understood this long before my kids got older. But your daughter's listening to you, the man in her life, long before she starts dating. One, she's watching how you treat her mother. She's watching how you speak to the women in your life. She's watching how you're handling conflict. She's watching how, and maybe bigger, if you apologize. She's watching whether the way you act, those actions match your words. Every single day, you have an opportunity to teach your daughters what love, healthy love, should look like, whether you realize it or not. And then someday, somebody's going to walk into her life and she's going to compare that guy to the things that you taught her. Not what you told her, but what you showed her. And that's why vulnerability matters. Because when we're vulnerable, it says to our wives, it says to our kids, you matter enough for me to have this conversation. You matter enough for me to tell you the truth, even though this might be hard. And men, again, uncomfortable conversations are what we're really good at avoiding. We avoid asking our daughters, hey, are you being treated well? We avoid asking our wives what they need from us on a regular basis. We avoid telling our own friends when we see red flags. And I'm not just talking about in a female friend, maybe your own friend who you see maybe treating a woman poorly. We avoid saying, hey, I think something's not right here. And so here's the thing that I think True North does a great job of, is that it makes it very clear that silence has a cost. And sometimes silence is much bigger than discomfort. In our case, obviously, we lost a child. So for us, all the what ifs and things of that nature. So many conversations that I wish I could have had with Hallie that I didn't get a chance to. Times when she pushed back and said, I already have a dad, that I wish I could have pushed just a little bit harder. And so the reality is, one difficult conversation today could prevent years of heartache for your family tomorrow. One honest conversation could change the trajectory of somebody's life. Just being courageous for a moment could create safety for somebody in your life that needs it. And something I haven't mentioned that's incredibly important is that we avoid asking our own sons how they're treating women in their lives. I can tell you that I personally didn't get this right for a long, long time. I carry guilt and shame from parts of my past, and I sure as heck don't want my boys to treat women the way that I watched Hallie being treated. So that means having hard conversations with our sons when they're also at a young age. And I think that's what being an ally really means. It means being the change ourselves, speaking up when our sons or one of our friends aren't showing up well for the women that are in their lives. It means talking to our daughters and our sons. And that doesn't mean that we're going to have all the answers. I don't, you don't, we don't. We're not going to be perfect in this process. We're going to make mistakes, but are we showing up? Are we listening? Are we learning? It means that we have to be willing to have the conversations that previous generations never had with their sons and daughters. It means that we choose courage over comfort because comfortability rarely changes anything. Conversations are where we start. Being vulnerable is where change starts to happen. As men, if we want to make a real difference in the women around us' lives, we have to be vulnerable. I think that's how you answer the question, how can I be better today? That's what we have. So hopefully men will love it on Thursday morning. And they'll applaud and I don't know. But yeah, that's what we have this Thursday. You can still get tickets to the event to truenorthofcolumbia.org for their Men as Allies event this Thursday morning, August 27th at the Crossing, 7 a.m. Doors open at 6:30. They usually have it done by 8. So hopefully we'll see some of you there. Come up and say hi. But all right, with that, we're going to head to the Missouri State Fair.
Giddy up. I can't wait.
Woo! Yeehaw!
Can't wait to have a corn dog.
Hometown of Eric Brummer, here we come. So thank you for listening this week. We hope that you have...
I'm just kidding. I'm not going to eat a corn dog.
I didn't think she would. She keeps saying that. I'm like, there's no way she's eating a corn dog. Hope you have a wonderful week and God bless. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Blended, Blessed, and Always a Mess. Lexi and Hal, take it away.
I'm Lexi.
And I'm Hallie.
Have a great week.
Or have the week that you deserve.
That was perfect.
Yeah, God bless.